Okay, so welcome everybody, and thanks for joining. My name is Ivan, and I'm a product manager of Virtuozzo Openprovider. Today we have our guests from Virtuozzo. First of all, it's Mike. He's a product manager of Virtuozzo Hybrid Server, who is going to be our man of the hour. But actually there are more people from Virtuozzo here as well. It's Anna, Virtuozzo Strategic Account Manager, and Ahmed, Virtuozzo Sales Director, EMEA. So they will be here as well to answer more in-depth questions about Virtuozzo business. And if there's, there will be, but I'm pretty sure there will be some time in the end of the session. So once again, welcome guys. And before we start, I would like to run you through the agenda quick. The session will take 1 hour. During the first 45 minutes, Mike will talk about what's new in the Virtuozzo business, technology, USPs, new products that have been recently introduced to the market by Virtuozzo. And in the end, I will have a couple of slides about Openprovider and Virtuozzo partnership. And last 15 minutes we will spend for QA session. So guys, feel free to also post your questions into the chat, and we will address them in the end of the session. But also, as long as there are several participants, I think it will be more in a free manner. So we will maybe even can have a chat verbally. So let's start, guys. Mike, I think you can start over.
Yeah, thank you and welcome everyone. So just give you a quick background about your speaker today, so about myself. So my name is Mike Wormy. I'm based in Germany, so in northwestern part, close to Cologne and the Netherlands border. I'm, well, actually Virtuozzo user since 18 years already. So I started back in the hosting industry with it. And used it and built a successful VPS business with it for like 8 years, and then switched over to Parallels. And back at this time, 10 years ago, Virtuozzo was still owned by Parallels, and before it has been spun out 5 years ago. I have more than 10 years experience in hosting companies and more than 10 years experience in product development, mainly for Virtuozzo and for Parallels. I also have a strong background in cyber protection because I was working for Acronis for a couple of years, and in my free time I have still some passion for some open source development, and I do this just to fresh my head from product management activity. So about Virtuozzo. So we are 20 years in the industry already. So we are a well-known company. We have a strong open source commitment. So we are mainly a huge contributor to open source projects like QEMU, the Linux kernel, libvirt, KVM, and so on. And a couple of technologies are invented by Virtuozzo or have been invented by Virtuozzo. For example, a p-hole, which is a live migration open source technology, and Creo, which is checkpoint and restore in user space. And also Linux containers have been introduced long ago by Virtuozzo. And of course, our open source product, which is called OpenVZ, is also part of our product portfolio. We have more than 450 active partners worldwide from several different market segments. So mainly the hosting providers, but also managed service providers, some telecommunication companies, ISVs, and some enterprise companies. You see some logos here, some well-known companies over the world, like GoDaddy, GMO, brands of United Internet like Ionos and Strato, for example. They are all our customers and basically serves the VPS business based on our Virtuozzo hybrid server product. Some additional facts. We are international company, so we have 110 employees worldwide with a presence in US, Mexico, UK, Germany, the Netherlands, France, Japan, and mainly our engineering is located in Russia. So our main engineering team is located in Moscow, driving our product engineering from there. So what is our mission? Basically, we want to enable service providers to leverage in an efficient and most cost-effective way their cloud infrastructure. So we mainly create software to run and operate VPS business. So it can be unmanaged VPS, it can be managed VPS, it can be some kind of enterprise VPS, which we are more and more focusing in the future. And by enterprise VPS, we mean here very secure VPSs with strong protection capabilities, strong isolation, and so on. And we provide additionally a multi-tenant hybrid infrastructure as a service solution for the SMB and enterprise market. It's not our main focus for today's discussion or presentation, but I will cover it a little bit later. What is our value for service providers? So there are a couple of factors which are key factors to become successful, and Virtuozzo is going to help you in several areas. So first of all, we want to increase your revenue and profit. That's one of the main goals for every company in general. So that's what we work together with service providers to achieve this. And we can reduce costs. We have a lot of capabilities for superior density of workloads in a single bare metal system. We can overcommit any resources and so on, which reduce costs significantly. And we can reduce business risks. Because we have a strong support team, our technology is mature, it's 20 years in the market, it's well known, many people can operate it, and so on. And this will, of course, minimize churn, just because product is known and mature. We will accelerate with joint efforts to go to market. So basically, when a new service provider would come to us and ask for starting VPS business, we can help them not only with infrastructure and software, but also with some jointly go-to-market efforts. And we make things very easy for service providers and end customers. So we have a built-in power panel so that end users can operate their VPSs, like they can start, stop, monitor them, and so on. They can do backups, restore backups, restart them. And of course, we have an administrator panel for service providers where they can manage their whole infrastructure and fleet of nodes. So they can deploy new nodes, they can migrate containers, they can migrate virtual machines, and so on. They can do disaster recovery, etc. This is still a very strong focus for us as a company. We want to be innovative. So that's why we always look for new market segments where we can build great features for customers into our technology. And this is what I will cover during the next slides. So what is Virtuozzo Hybrid Server? There are two main use cases for Virtuozzo Hybrid Server. One is shared hosting. Here you can run containers. So mainly shared hosting environment should always be running containers due to density and performance considerations with overcommit. And you can run it on top of local storage. And you can use, for example, Plesk or cPanel to manage shared hosting infrastructure. In this case, you only need a bare metal system, deploy Virtuozzo on top of it, create a couple of VPSs running on top of containers. And inside these containers, you can create shared hosting accounts via Plesk, for example. So to create a domain, email addresses, websites, and so on. And the other use case is to host VPSs. So in the first use case, like in shared hosting, customer has no root access to the VPS. He basically has access to an service provider panel where he can order domains and he has an FTP account to upload website data, but that's it. In the second scenario, it's root access to a VPS. In this case, customer is responsible for everything, so he can deploy whatever he wants, any application inside the Linux container. He is in charge of securing it to the configuration changes and so on. In this case, he can also use a virtual machine. so it's not bound to a container. A container, of course, has some advantages like higher density, almost zero resource overhead, and so on. In case of virtual machines, he's able to run Windows as a guest operating system, and he has access to kernel functionality if it is required. In both cases, it allows a flexible resource management. So basically, you can, on the fly, scale out vertically containers and virtual machines by adding more memory, adding more CPUs, adding additional disks, resizing the disk space, and so on. It can run on top of local storage and on top of our software-defined storage, which is also part of Virtuozzo. With software-defined storage, you get additional capabilities like high available containers and virtual machines. So when some compute node is, doesn't work anymore, so it's faulty, all these containers and virtual machines which have been run on such node will automatically become available and started again on some other nodes in the cluster. And you have some, I've mentioned already, a VPS self-service panel where end users can manage their VPSs. So this is a high-level overview about Virtuozzo hybrid server architecture. So on the bottom layer, you usually have either your local storage or Virtuozzo storage. It's not a mandatory requirement to run containers and virtual machines on top of Virtuozzo storage. You can either use local or distributed storage. This runs on bare metal hardware. It's no vendor lock, so it doesn't require anything special. Basically, whatever is supported by Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7, it will be supported by Virtuozzo. So you can buy systems from Dell, from HPE, from Supermicro, from any vendor you prefer or you have a contract with, and you can buy those nodes, deploy Virtuozzo on top of it, form a cluster, and run your containers and virtual machines on top of it. Then we have on the left side our system containers. Actually, we call them system containers because it's a huge difference compared to a Docker approach, which is only an application container. In our case, we isolate multiple applications in a single container context. So for example, you want to have a Linux distribution like Ubuntu or CentOS, you can create it inside a container. This container will start init process, and init will start SSH, web server, MySQL, mail server, and so on, all within the same container. And to this container, for this container, you have root access, and this root access can be given to an end user so that they can log in to this container and do management operations like configuration changes, uploading websites, deploying WordPress, deploying additional applications, and so on. Of course, in this case, you can right now run only Linux inside because it's a Linux host operating system, and the kernel is shared across the container, so that's why you are only able to run Linux containers. On the other side, we also have virtual machines running on top of our Virtuozzo hypervisor, which is KVM based with more than 1,000 patches, just on steroids. So it's much faster and has a lot of additional capabilities, but its base feature is the KVM. And inside virtual machines, you can run any guest operating system like Linux or Windows because you have virtualized device drivers, virtualized devices, which are attached to a virtual machine, and you can run any operating system inside. Of course, it has less density and less performance compared to containers, just due to the fact that it requires additional memory for running a kernel, doing device emulation, and so on. Also, there's another unique feature in Virtuozzo, which allows you to do live patching of containers and the host system. We call it ready kernel, so it's basically a K-patch-based service, which is shipped together with Virtuozzo hybrid servers. There's nothing you need to license additionally. It works out of the box when you deploy Virtuozzo hybrid server and install a license on it. The same applies to our other product, which is called Virtuozzo Hybrid Infrastructure. So it's integrated out of the box. And basically, what does it do? You can apply critical security updates without the necessity to reboot the host node. These security updates in kernel are applied immediately to the host and to containers as they run a shared kernel. The patches are loaded into the system memory and immediately applied to the kernel. So we replace during runtime without any interruption specific kernel parts and modules which have a security breach or which have a security flaw. We patch them live, replace their content in memory, and everything will continue to work. And you can do this on a regularly basis. So basically in a default scenario, we shake like once a day if there's a ready kernel update available, and we'll deploy it automatically. So what are the benefits of Virtuozzo Hybrid Server? First of all, it's a Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 based. So it runs on a wide range of commodity hardware, uses kernel 3.10. So basically we use what is inside Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 and patch it with our patch set to make containers accessible under our Virtuozzo kernel. Containers use C groups and C group namespaces for limits, isolation, and accounting of resources. So it's based on some standard functionality with additional capabilities we built into our containers. We have unified container and virtual machine management via UUIDs. You probably know this concept from libvirt and KVM, where you can specify your UID for virtual machine management and operations like start, stop, and so on. We have the same unified way for containers. I've mentioned already our virtual machines are based on KVM and QEMU, so on KVM hypervisor and QEMU user space and device emulation part. We have memory guarantees and support virtual memory hot plugging for containers as well as for virtual machines. And we have a daemon which is called VCMMD, which is a Virtuozzo Container Memory Management daemon, which is an extremely powerful and density and performance-oriented memory manager for containers and virtual machines. We have ready kernel for live patching. Virtual machine disk images and backups are stored in standard QCore2 format. So it's not something we have to build on our own. We can leverage open source components here. And container live migration is made via Creo and phall. So Creo is checkpoint and restoring user space, and phall is a live migration open source piece of it. Regarding Virtuozzo performance benefits. So on the left side, you see our system containers versus KVM virtual machines. It's just CentOS KVM versus the Virtuozzo containers. And you see that our density for containers is almost twice compared to KVM. And this task is just running WordPress CMS inside container and virtual machine and compares the response time of the WordPress web server with different amounts of containers and virtual machines running on top of it. So when the response time hits a certain defined threshold and becomes larger, then this is our cutoff line and we stop putting additional VMs and containers on top of it. And you see that containers operate as twice as much compared to virtual machines. And of course, we did the LAMP benchmark. So with so-called DVD store transaction. And you see as well that we almost has double performance compared to virtual machines. And regarding Virtuozzo storage, we usually compare it with Ceph, so with latest version of Ceph, because it's pretty much same architecture, same design. It has similar features for storage as a service to serve block storage, for example, via iSCSI, S3, via Amazon's S3 protocol. We also have built-in NFS, and we have a native driver for our containers and virtual machines on top of it. And you see that it's almost 3.5 times faster than Ceph. And this is for a realistic workload, like random read and random write IOPS, so mixture between 70% read and 30% write. this is the typical behavior. So in general, you never have only read IOPS or only write IOPS. You have a mixture of both. And on the right side, you see how much better our Virtuozzo hypervisor is compared to CentOS KVM. And this is for running Windows Server 2016 as an example inside. And you see that our hypervisor performs 85% better than CentOS KVM. The reason is due to our highly optimized drivers we built for Windows guests. So they are based on Virtuozzo. We are also very strong developer, and we have a lot of commits into Virtuozzo drivers, and a couple of drivers are built by Virtuozzo. But there is some capabilities which is only available inside the Virtuozzo hypervisor. So about Virtuozzo hybrid platform. You may probably know Virtuozzo is a product which is, I've mentioned already, very mature. It's 20 years old, and nowadays there are not so many service providers created anymore. I mean, 20 years ago, this was a very new market. There were a lot of companies created and startups founded in the hosting industry, and they all had to use some product to build their business. So we delivered Virtuozzo to them with containers, with a self-service portal and an administrator panel. Later, we extended it with a distributed storage and with virtual machines. But everything was in a single product. So when you came to Virtuozzo and want to run a hosting business, we could give you a single product and you can start your business. Nowadays, it doesn't work anymore in this way. Many service providers are acquired by larger ones because they cannot grow very fast anymore. They grow only via acquisitions. And due to that, they have no homogeneous infrastructure anymore. Everything is heterogeneous. They have different panels. They have different billing systems. They have different backup solutions, even different virtualization solutions, and so on. And to react on this market change, we started last year our initiative to transform our Virtuozzo hybrid server product into some platform approach. So basically, we will continue to deliver virtualization technology like our containers and our virtual machines and our storage. But we also will open the product to become extensible with third-party components. And this is what we call Virtuozzo hybrid platform. And on this slide, you see we have identified a couple of areas like admin panel, self-service portal, monitoring, storage, security, backup, a cluster and API, billing and provisioning, Windows containers, which is again a hot topic, and virtual environment templates, and an application catalog. And here we will partner with additional companies. You see, especially in admin panel and self-service area, we have already some partners which are working with us, where we have ready-to-use integration right now. For example, Virtualizer, Flexient, and Solus.io support our technology already for virtual machines. And with next version coming in Q4, they will also support it for containers. So everything which is green here is already available right now and can be used. So this integration is already available. The yellow bullet points here will become available in Q4 this year. So when we release Virtuozzo hybrid server version 7.5, which will be a major improvement with a lot of new features. And the red ones are coming soon. Basically, it's only one. It's about Microsoft SVP certification. So right now, we have certified our hypervisor already by Microsoft, and we just need to finish the paperwork for it, and but technically it passed already. What does it mean? So when you run a Microsoft Windows guest operating system and applications like Exchange, SharePoint, MS SQL databases inside our VMs, you can directly go to Microsoft and ask for support. Because usually they would ask under which system it is running, and when you would say under CentOS KVM, for example, they will immediately stop supporting it because it runs in an uncertified environment. Microsoft is not going to help you. In our case, with Virtuozzo Hypervisor, which is still based on KVM, we got certification, and you can go directly to Microsoft to ask for help for like MS SQL problems or Exchange problems or configuration troubles and so on. They will immediately help you. And regarding roadmap of Virtuozzo Hybrid Server, actually, I've mentioned already that we are going to publish Virtuozzo Hybrid Server 7.5. Here it's still mentioned as update 15, but we decided to name it to version it 7.5 because it's a major improvement for us. What we are going to deliver there, which is coming in Q4 this year, it's again about Windows containers. You may know we had in the past a product, it was called Parallels Virtuozzo Containers for Windows. It was a crude hack in Microsoft Windows operating system because it's a closed source product. We didn't have access to the source code, so we had to build drivers in a very low-level way to support containers on Windows platform. This is not what we want to repeat, and this is not what we're going to repeat here. Microsoft released in Windows Server 2016 container support itself. In 2016, it was based on Docker, but in Windows Server 2019, they replaced it with some in-house developed container platform. They call it Windows Container Platform, WCP. And this is what we are going to use as a base underlying feature for our Windows containers. So we use Windows container technology from Microsoft, attach it to our tool set and to our APIs, which is VZCTL command line interface, PLCTL command line interface, and libvirt management for containers and virtual machines. And we attach Windows containers to it so that you as a service provider will be able to manage Windows containers with the knowledge you have already and with the tool set you know. For example, you can just create a Windows container using PLCTL command line, and that's it. You don't need to learn something new like how to deploy Windows containers on Windows. You can use our toolset, deploy it on a Windows server or inside a Windows virtual machine, and you can start creating Windows containers. There is a strong benefit for such use case. For service providers, they license Windows under SPLA agreement in general. And in this particular case of Windows containers, Microsoft doesn't license containers independently. So basically, you buy an SPLA license for a single host, and you can create as many containers as you want without additional payment for it. Microsoft can change this anytime soon in future, but right now they have no plans for it. Right now, you can run as many containers with a single Windows license on a single node. And this is a strong benefit, especially because Windows containers have, again, very low memory overhead. Density is very high. We made already some internal measurements. It's twice as high as compared to Hyper-V virtual machines. So it's pretty much similar to our Linux containers. They have double density compared to KVM. And for Windows containers, it's pretty much similar. They have double density compared to Hyper-V VMs. We will also introduce libvirt for containers with this update. So libvirt will be our standard node management API in future. Right now, we have it for virtual machines already for a long time, but we will extend it for containers. With libvirt for containers, we immediately get support from Solus IO control panel to run to work with containers. Right now, it's also only available for VMs. And we will introduce auto update for any component running on top of Virtuozzo Hybrid Server. Right now, we have it for ready kernel, but we will introduce it for any security, any minor, any update, which is available for Virtuozzo Hybrid Server. It can be disabled, and on new installation, it will be enabled by default. Right now, we have already Acronis agentless backup for containers. So you can do backups based on Acronis Cyber Backup Cloud without deploying any agent inside the container. You deploy the agent on the host node and do a discovery, and all containers can be backed up. We will introduce the same with the help of Acronis for virtual machines with the next update. So it's about feature parity between containers and VMs. So with next version, you will be able to do agentless update, agentless backup of containers and virtual machines. And we will introduce agent-based cyber protection for Windows virtual machines. This is a new product from Acronis. It's about ransomware protection, malware protection, and so on. And we will introduce it and bundle it together with Virtuozzo. And in next year, so in Q2 next year, we are going to publish Virtuozzo Hybrid Server 8. It will be rebased on Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, introduce modular file system support. So what does modular file system support mean here? Right now, you can run containers and VMs on top of local storage on top of ext4. With modular file system support, we want to introduce ZFS to our customers. ZFS has a lot of benefits like deduplication, built-in compression. It supports volumes up to 16 exabytes, which is enough for local storage. And it combines volume manager and a file system and data redundancy and data scrubbing just into a single file system. And actually, it's in use already by some of our customers. They use it on top of /VZ. It's not supported officially, but it works fine. So for us, it's only to validate, verify the configuration, and to build a good default configuration which works for any kind of workload. And of course, a Virtuozzo storage integration, which is obvious, and we will have additional third-party integrations, what I've mentioned on the previous slide for Virtuozzo hybrid platform. In Q4 next year, we are going to publish a beta version of Virtuozzo Hybrid Server 8, and we will introduce a Kubernetes API. So what does it mean? I've explained already, for single node management, we will have libvirt. With libvirt, you can create containers and virtual machines, do the daily operations like start, stop, changing memory, changing resources, and so on. But if you don't want to do the infrastructure management on your own, you need a clustered API, a clustered orchestration way to create containers and virtual machines. And here we will use Kubernetes for containers and kubvirt for virtual machines. And it will support Windows containers, Linux containers, Windows VMs, and Linux VMs. And the difference compared to libvirt will be the following. You probably create a cluster, Kubernetes cluster with 10 nodes, 20 nodes, and you only say to Kubernetes, please create a container. Kubernetes will decide automatically on its own what is the best node to place and create such container. So it will all this infrastructure management tasks internally, you don't need to care about it. And this is pretty much the difference compared to libvirt approach. Here you do the infrastructure management on your own. With Kubernetes, everything is done by Kubernetes cluster. And we will introduce Docker Hub integration for templates. Right now, we have our own template approach. We call them EZ templates. Basically, it's a couple of Linux distributions which are downloaded and prepackaged for a rapid container deployment. And what we want to do with Docker Hub, we will basically keep our utilities, but we will switch the backend from downloading packages directly from the repository of the vendor to Docker Hub. For service providers, it gives immediately access to several thousand of applications and operating systems, and they can build competitive offerings to distinguish their offering from their competitor, for example, and because some service providers are focusing on WordPress, another one is focusing on some other applications. Right now, we don't have these applications, but with Docker Hub, they will become immediately accessible via the same toolset. So you use VZ package create, WordPress Ubuntu, for example, and it creates a template with Ubuntu and WordPress, and you can rapidly deploy containers from it. We will have WHMCS integration. Actually, we have it right now, but since we switched to a new libvirt API, they need to rebuild their integration as well. We will have Acronis backup integration, agentless for containers and virtual machines, and introduce VZ backup support, VZ backup migration support to third-party backups. And in Q2 in 2022, we are going to publish Virtuozzo Hybrid Server 8. There will be no new features. It's mainly focusing on beta feedback, bug fixing, and stabilization, just to deliver a rock-solid product. Regarding other solutions, I've mentioned already quickly, beside Virtuozzo Hybrid Server, which is our main product for service providers, we also have a couple of others. So it's about Virtuozzo Hybrid Infrastructure. This is also focusing on service provider, but mainly for SMBs and enterprises. It's it doesn't come with a local storage, for example, so it's a fully highly available, highly redundant product with redundancy of any capability, any data which is stored and run on top of it. It's our public and private cloud hyper-converged product just with a single management interface. It has multi-tenant capabilities and is able to operate private cloud, public clouds. You can build virtual data center with it. You can give customers access to a tenant so that they can operate infrastructure on their own. They can create virtual machines. They can run workloads. They can resize workloads. You define them some quotas, and they can basically operate infrastructure on their own, or you can do it for them. So it serves any kind of use case like unmanaged private cloud, managed private cloud, and so on. And what runs on top of it is Virtuozzo Hybrid Workspace. With Virtuozzo Hybrid Workspace, we enable you to deliver virtual desktop infrastructure to your end customers or users, or to employees in your company. It's a full-featured Windows desktop with a set of applications which you can also deploy additionally. And it allows to give you or your employees or end users access to all kinds of applications that are needed for working productively. It's very secure and fast because it runs on top of our infrastructure. It's optimized for it. And so whenever you deploy Virtuozzo Hybrid Infrastructure, you can deploy Virtuozzo Hybrid Workspace on top of it. So now I need to turn back the word to Openprovider.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, just a few words about our relationship, business relationship, and how we add value in the chain. Well, Virtuozzo and Openprovider have been partners since 2011, when Virtuozzo was part of Parallels at that time. Later, actually, as you all know, Parallels split, and though we've continued our business relationship, and now we actually in the phase of reloading and re-engaging it, basically. What makes sense to mention here is that Openprovider has a Virtuozzo distributor status. We are one of the few Virtuozzo distributors worldwide. Distributor status implies some privileges, and the main one is actually a different billing model. Customers that buy Virtuozzo licenses from us are charged per node, which helps our partners to save basically save money and reduce their total cost of ownership on their infrastructure. Save actually even more than with the capabilities that Virtuozzo offers. So yeah, there's even more savings implied. What else? Virtuozzo is seamlessly integrated into Openprovider control panel, and we provide public API to automate ordering process, license ordering and license management. And also, if you are acquainted with our membership model, we offer special discounts for members on Virtuozzo products as well. Basically, that's it on this slide. I have one more. Mike, if you can switch to the next page. Oh, it's not there. Okay, no problem. Oh, well, yeah, yeah, it's actually a hidden slide, but okay, no problem. I just wanted to share that Virtuozzo has now its own shelf in Openprovider control panel. Before it was hidden very deeply in the woods, let's say. Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, and right now it's explicitly visible. Yeah, and all new products that Mike has mentioned, they will appear here as a separate product on the shelf. So that's basically it on my end. I think we still have 20 minutes for questions. I haven't seen anything in the chat yet, but maybe if you guys have some, just drop a message into the chat, or we can even unmute you so you can ask it verbally.
Yeah, I'm just pushing, allowing to talk everyone, so anyone can ask the question if they have. And just for your information, we will send you the video of the webinar as well, in case you missed the beginning or the middle part.
Okay. Let's wait for another, I don't know, 30 seconds. And if there are no questions, I would suggest them to wrap up.
Agree.
Guys, don't be shy.
No one has questions.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, I have to say, Mike. Thanks a lot. A lot of technical information as well. Yeah, maybe people think that it's hard to react on those arguments that you have presented. Those strong arguments. Well, yeah. Anyway, then thanks. Thanks for joining. As Yerbal mentioned, the recording will be shared later on. Also, if you want to reach out, you can reach out to via email, productmanagement@openprovider.com, where we can even forward your questions about Virtuozzo to Virtuozzo account manager and link you guys so you can have a more in-depth conversation about the opportunities that Virtuozzo gives and also about the added value that Openprovider can bring to your business. So that's it, guys. Thank you and goodbye, right?
Okay.
Exactly.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
For the presentation.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ui, das ging jetzt aber.